Okay, so welcome everybody for the opening event day of the exhibition by Vajiko Chachkhiani here at the Porissa Museum. This is a solo exhibition that we have been working on with the artist for a while, and during this process the work has developed from like the very first ideas to the actual work that it is today. And so it has been made specially for Porissa Museum. And we are very happy to have you here, Vajiko.
Thanks for having me here.
It's been a great pleasure to work with you. And I've been here as the curator of the exhibition. And then, yes, I'm the director of this Porissa Museum, Anni Venäläinen. And the other curator of the show is Luigi Fassi, who unfortunately cannot be with us here today because of his other projects that keeps him busy in Italy, Torino. But we are here now with Vajiko to talk about the work. And so I guess we start, and you can tell a little bit about the background of the work.
Yeah, first of all, hello everybody. Thanks, Anni, for the introduction and for invitation. It's been a great pleasure to work on the show, and it's been kind of a long journey because of COVID and everything. And the starting point of the show is one of the essays of Walter Benjamin, which is the task of the translator. And the problem or issue which is somehow broke down there is the translation and the way translation loses the essence while translating the poem or a text, which doesn't mean it's good or bad, it just changes the essence of actual text. And in this show, what I tried was I took the poem by Arthur Rimbaud'n, which is called I forgot. Sorry.
The Orphan's New Year.
Yeah, the Orphan's New Year, and I tried to translate it into a sculptures, into more physical world, which taking from more imaginative world to a physicality, and tried to somehow maintain the aura that the poem has, for me at least, which in the end somehow doesn't work, and I cannot really translate this poem because I believe it's impossible. And in this failed attempts, like new essence or a new worldview is taking place, and that's the show somehow. It's like the compilation of failed attempts, I would say. And to go a bit further,
yes, it's like, okay, so we have two rooms, and both of them have a little bit of different atmosphere. So it's one work that is in two rooms.
Yeah. So to go back to the show, it's somehow the approach I always have. It's a narration. Each element or each like sculptural would be your filmic, like moving image. It somehow serves as a point for a dramaturgy to build up, and then in the end there is a more or less like catharsis. I think I approach shows like film production. And sculpture-wise, in the show we have sculptures which are activated by the films, and that was the idea to find a way how to integrate film and sculpture. Normally I do film separate from the sculptures, and in this case the sculptures which are arranged in the show, they are mostly activated by films, and they cannot function without, because the surface and texture, which is very important for sculpture or any other thing, is given by the films. And the shapes I took from the notion by Donald Winnicott, which is the first possessions and not me possessions. That's how they called, and that's he was a pediatrician and psychologist, and he's psychoanalysis and working with patients is based on the childhood, and what he actually says is the very important point is when a kid is removed from mother, it's the first possessions is the objects which are the transitional objects that take him from the mom to a real world, and that's the rite of passage, which is very important for the formation of his adulthood, and that somehow defines his adulthood. And all the forms are taken from toys for kids, and those objects, I'm sorry I forgot, are mainly the toys, and could be a fluffy toys, or could be a thumb or a pillow. And in this case I took the forms of toys, which I found I was looking for a year because of my kid. I have a small kid, and I took from his toys. And then those toys are mostly the flat ones, the puzzles, for very simple puzzles. And then it was somehow made into a three-dimensional, because normally those are two-dimensional toys. And then it's also the play of three-dimension and then two-dimensional film, which somehow creates the whole sculpture. Yeah.
Yeah. So there is this in this other room. We have this shape of an elephant, and then in the other room we have a shape of a tree, and they are both from the this puzzle for very small kids, where the kids can find the shape of putting them in the box, correct box. So they are from your kids' toys.
Yeah. Yeah, and. Yeah, that's the idea. As I said, it was failed attempt, and then the elephant that is standing is pretty real size elephant, and which has a permanent rain, which film, and that somehow I took from the point of existential crisis, when everybody kind of gets to the point when all the knowledge and experience loses its meaning. That's what happens when the wheel of life is somehow under. And this piece is somehow monument to the permanent melancholy, or when the existential crisis of individual comes in, and this huge somehow heaviness or sadness kind of goes in cycles, and that's what is about this piece. And of course it is connected to the translation of the poem, which is somehow a sad poem, because it is about the kids who have no parents, and it's the New Year's Eve, and that's the whole situation, and all the thing is happening around that time. And important part of the this room is that it's pretty dark, and it has a blue color, which is also connected to more sadness. And next to the elephant is a mirror, which has a application of Vaseline that distorts the image, and the rain is somehow more distorted and dreamy, and that's also part of the a memory, which is important somehow part of the present life and present condition. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it.
Yeah, so, and in this elephant room, it's a lovely blue atmosphere. So this figure of the heavy, big, large animal is standing in the rain, and in this blue atmosphere that somehow, for me, it evokes the ideas of a childhood, dreaming when you are go to bed, and all this the world starts to take weird shapes because your imagination starts to run, for example, in the moments of when you are falling into sleep. So then the world starts to look a bit weird maybe, and also like the distorted image on the, like, because the audience can see their own reflection and also the reflection of the elephant in the mirror.
Yep.
So it's quite nice, also dreamy effect. And you were talking about also the mirror as some kind of also symbol for the memory, and how our memory is always a bit distorted. We like have some kind of images of the past, but they're never completely clear.
Yeah.
So and also it makes me think of these children's books or fairy tales where you can use the mirror to jump into another reality or another world. So like there's a lot of these kind of symbolics into the mirror, and it has been used in children's stories also a lot in that sense. So I mean, I guess it's like, it's very, in a way, a very simple setting, but then it opens up many different interpretations also at the same time. So it kind of...
I hope so.
Yeah. So it's like the longer you somehow spend on it and like thinking about it, then it's it starts to bring all these kind of ideas also for the viewer.
Yeah, there was a good point. I forgot about the mood. We have like two moods somehow, two different moods, and they both could be that what Anni mentioned, like before you fall asleep, like when it's more like atmosphere is more moody, I would say, or more obscure, and that's I think what we tried in the show, and hopefully we managed it. Yep.
Mm-hmm. And you were also saying that you have been using the rain as a symbol before in your work at the Venice Biennale in 2017 when you were representing Georgia in the Georgian pavilion.
Yeah, somehow rain is always in my works, in sculptures, also in films. I use, and it's always like a permanent rain. It never stops. And what I like about rain, or find interesting, it is somehow, on the one hand, clears everything, could like whip like all the dust that like I guess like humans do or other creatures or trees, but on the other hand, if it is permanent, it may get dangerous and it could like cause flood and others. So it has this counter puncts, which I think it's very important in art making, because I believe art somehow is like the in between of two counterparts. So that's rain. Yeah, that's rain. Rain is really important. Yeah.
Mm. And then on the other room, like if we talk about it a little bit also, so then there's the green room, which is more rich in terms of like objects. So there's more like details in it.
Yep. Yeah. Also, the green room, I would say that that's the first room. It's better to check that room because it is has more elements that create and builds up the narration, and it would be better to go then to the second room because it somehow is the catharsis for the whole show, because it's just the two bigger pieces. And in the green room, it has more details, as we said. There is a kid sleeping, and then there is on the bed and on the blanket is another film, which is Flying Hawk, which I find it's done by a bird watcher. His name is Ferris, and that's also pretty poetic the way it looks, but it could be also pretty dangerous because the hawk is on the hunt for prey. And then next to the kid is another kid. His shadow or his twin, but it's burned. And there is also behind the bed there is a huge roundish mirror which is facing the wall, somehow like closing down the reflection or image so that we don't see it. And the backside of the mirror also gives like 10% of the reflected room, which is also connected to the memories and like to the past, which we don't remember 100%, but we remember some, and that's more the reference to that. And another piece is again the tree, a Christmas tree, which is also a kid toy, and it is activated by the video of fireworks, and it's like permanent fireworks are like having the more happy input in the show, while the rest is pretty sad. So that's how it is, I think.
Yeah, but it kind of also emphasized the sadness of it all, because having these fireworks, beautiful fireworks, but then realizing that these two kids are orphans alone in their room, like spending the New Year alone without the parents, and we don't know where the parents actually are, but they are somehow left there.
Yeah, and there are details that somehow suggest the absence of the parents, which is the burned shoe making molds, which is the wooden one, and that's male shoes, which somehow is the reference to absence of a like father. And then there is some horns, empty horns, which also the body of an animal is absent, and just the horns stay there like empty horns, which is also, it's pretty strange to talk because you haven't seen the show yet, but I'm explaining everything. I don't know if I have to.
Yeah, but it's good because I'm sure that it's funny because they will have some kind of image of the show in their heads, and when they see it, like we can go after this together to see the show. And
the horns are connected to the bed, so it's gives also a bad connotation of being an animal. And green mood for me also is referred to somehow like a zoo, and the way like also like we look at the animals there, and
you know, like in reptile boxes or like like classes for reptiles, so they have this kind of greenish tone of light.
Yeah, but also as we talked, this has retro Christmas mood to the green like color.
And also like the horns on the bed, they make me think of children's like the way how children use their imagination to make objects alive, like they can give meanings to objects. So the kind of the bed comes an animal also for the child, that the child is sleeping in the bed, that could be also like in his imagination some kind of animal, or like how children can create the world around them using their imagination. So maybe like, so there's these many layers of that also reflects the idea of the transitional object by the Winnicott, the psychoanalyst. So like the idea of like how the children, when they are trying to transfer their life from the taking like the environment where the mother usually or the father is taking care of the child, and then they finally like at some point start to understand that the world around them is like more than the mother or the person who is taking care of them, and they realize that the world is always not kind and it might be like dangerous place. So in that case, like the toys are like they help the transfer for the child from this baby world to the real world.
Yeah, we can say that the show could be like a somehow rite of passage from like childhood to a real world somehow, and this like moment of more obscure and dreamy kind of a process that happens because it is so much time, like so much time has passed. I mean, I don't remember how I did it, so.
Yeah, but it's also like when you think of this, that these two kids in the show, or like in the poem of Rimbaud'n, they go through quite extreme rite of becoming suddenly like kind of adults, like having to take care of themselves because the adults are actually gone.
Yep.
So when you become an orphan or you lose your parents, you just somehow have to suddenly grow up in a sense, like.
You have to, yeah.
Yeah, and like I'm just like it also makes us think of the current world situation where there's a lot of kids who are actually facing this thing at the moment, like losing their parents, but.
Yeah, somehow indirectly the idea came from the current political situation, like that. I mean, I know that poem really long time ago. I mean, since ages, but now it got a new meaning, and I think that's the thing about like all the past, like knowledge that we have that always returns into like whatever, like political or any other situation is kind of activating the past. And that's a very important thing, I guess, for me too. Yeah.
Mm. So I mean, like there's like many layers on this.
It seems so. Yeah.
The more you think about it, you kind of pick up a new, like kind of thing.
Yeah.
So it's like somehow very contemporary and also somehow very timeless. If you think of the theme of like being an orphan or being a child or childhood imagination or like, so there's many kind of different themes there at play at the same time.
And I think in today's political context, it somehow involves the violence, and I think the like more the violent world which we have around with all the conflicts and stuff, that's kind of a changes. And I think in future also the show could have a different concept, I would say, if it's placed in different place or time.
Mm.
That's the history, I guess, what repeats itself. And,
But hopefully the show as itself, it's not really dark or scary, or it's quite, it's maybe a bit melancholy, but it's also quite somehow comforting somehow. It's not a scary place, even if there's this kind of dark tones in it.
Yeah, that's I guess the show for sad kids. That's a joke.
Yeah. So, thank you, Vajiko. Like, do you have any questions in the audience? Like, how would you? Maybe it's a bit difficult to ask because you haven't seen the show. Yeah. So we can also end the discussion here and go together to the exhibition.
Sure.
So there, Vajiko will be there with us, so we can also discuss the things in more detail there. But now, if you feel like you want to ask something or.
Maybe we go down then.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much,
Thank you so
Vajiko.
much, and thanks for listening. Yeah.